All right, I think we're ready to get started. I appreciate everyone joining. We may still have a few attendees calling in. I'd like to thank everyone for joining our webinar today. We're going to be talking about how to work smarter with Salesforce Lightning. This webinar is being brought to you by Marlabs, and we'll talk a little bit about that. I'm Chris Clegg. I'm the North American Salesforce practice lead for Marlabs. I've been around and involved with the Salesforce ecosystem since about 2007. Personally involved in leading a team that's implemented about 1,500 Salesforce projects. So we have a lot of Salesforce experience here. We have Peter Morales, the CIO of CIEE, joining us today, and we'll be introducing Peter and talking a little bit about CIEE and how they're using Salesforce and Lightning a little bit later in the webinar. First, I just want to introduce Marlabs to some of you who may not be familiar with the organization. We're a U.S. company based out of Piscataway, New Jersey, been in business since 1996. We've got about 2,400 employees today. We've been a Salesforce partner since 2011. And we work in the high end of the SME market and also with large enterprises, as you can see by some of the clients that we've got here on the screen. We work across a variety of industry verticals, including financial services, retail, education and nonprofits, and also healthcare. We work with a large variety of clients. We'll just pause a second here so you can take a look at some of the logos on this screen. And I think as people ask, where does Marlabs fit in the ecosystem? We're not a big four SI. We're not a small company either. And I always tell people I think we're just the right size. We're large enough and have been around a long time that we've got the experience and the employee depth to bring a lot of value to our clients. But we're also small enough that we're very flexible. We have very flexible ways we engage with our customers, working in a variety of business models. And we're known for our flexibility and customer focus. We talk specifically about the Salesforce practice. I think the thing that really stands out in this slide, other than the fact that we've implemented close to 500 Salesforce projects, have about 150 people in the organization focused on Salesforce, but we've got a very high customer satisfaction rating. And this is a satisfaction rating that we don't create, but rather it's something that's done by Salesforce. Salesforce evaluates all their partners on a continuous basis, and right now we're scoring a 9.63 out of 10. We have very good customer results. We get a lot of 10 out of 10 surveys back from our client sites. So one of the important things to consider when engaging with Marlabs is we're very focused on customer service. The other thing that's important to know is we are a Platinum Consulting partner. So we're one of the highest tiered partners in the Salesforce ecosystem, and we've been delivering successful results to many clients all over the world since 2011. So I think that's enough about Marlabs. What we're going to do now is we're going to start talking a little bit about Lightning, and then we'll get to Peter's portion of the presentation. But before we do that, I'd like to do a quick poll just to get a little background on how people are using Salesforce and Lightning today, if at all. So we're going to pause about 45 seconds to a minute for people to move that poll. Okay, welcome back. We've closed the poll. Hopefully we've also fixed some of the audio. Let me know. I know it was a little bit distorted before. And just a quick coverage of the poll results. We have about half of our attendees today are not using Salesforce Lightning, but are thinking about it. And about 20% of our attendees are not using Salesforce at all. and the other about 25% are using it. 5% say they really love it, and 22% say it's pretty good, but they're looking for ways to customize and optimize the usage of Lightning. So it's just to give you a little background on who's on the call and what they're doing. What we'd like to do now is go on and look at Lightning in a little more detail. So first of all, I think everyone is maybe a little bit familiar with Lightning, but for people who aren't sure what the Lightning experience is, this is a new user interface for Salesforce. It was released about a couple of years ago, but really in the last 6 months or so, with the last 2 releases of Salesforce, it's really come onto its own and seeing a lot of adoption in the enterprise. But Lightning is a lot more than just a user interface. Salesforce is designed to be a low-code environment. That is, you can build applications without writing code and going through traditional development cycles. The one problem with Salesforce, though, is the earlier version, that low-code model broke down when it came to customizing the user interface. You could do a lot of things in Salesforce without writing code, but when you had to go in and customize the way the application behaved or the way it looked on the screen, you had to go back and write a lot of traditional code. What's happening in today's environment, though, is with Lightning, you now have a low-code user interface. And as you'll see, it's fast and it's easily improves user adoption, adds a lot of new features. But the really important thing is it also can be developed very, very quickly. And it's easy to build reusable components. So if you do have to customize something, you can easily reuse it. I think that's one of the most important things to remember about Lightning is it's not only improving the user interface, but giving us a lot of options in terms of how we engage our users. So it's a rich user interface. There's a lot of out-of-the-box components to help you build applications. It also runs faster, and it's also device aware. That is, it's designed to run on mobile devices. It works just as well on mobile phones and tablets as it does on the desktop. We're going to look at a few details around Lightning and why it makes a difference and why it's making such a big impact in the Salesforce user community. The first thing is you're seeing that the screens in Lightning have a much more modern look and feel to them. They're designed, again, to work and look the same way as they do on mobile devices and on the big screens. Previously in Salesforce, you've always had the ability to construct hierarchies of accounts and contacts. But for the first time in Lightning, you can visually see those structures on the screen. We can see how our customers are arranged. If we see a corporation is owned by another one, you can see the hierarchy of that reporting. You can see who reports to who in our customer base. Easy to see contacts. One other characteristic of Lightning is also now you see a sales path as you work through a pipeline for an opportunity. If you're working on a service case, if you're doing anything that has a workflow or a process, Salesforce now shows you a visual indication of where you are in that process. And in fact, they've expanded that a little bit more into what people are referring to as a Kanban view. And this is a card-based view of your environment. So for example, here you see a sales pipeline, and we can see opportunities are in different stages of the pipeline. We can see the total for the opportunities in those different stages outlined on the screen. And we also see the opportunities themselves are a series of cards. So I can edit opportunities from here, I can remove them, and I can also promote them or change a sales stage, and that's just by dragging and dropping the card from one column to another. So if you're a salesperson managing a lot of opportunities, instead of wading through a lot of text screens, going in and editing sales stages for each opportunity, now it's fast to see it all a high view, and you can change opportunity sales stages just by dragging and dropping them. It makes it a lot easier to get an overview of where you stand in your sales process and how to edit them. We also see in here an opportunity to add and manage the price book faster. If you're selling products through Salesforce, adding a product and providing details was a fairly long and complicated process. Now Lightning is very, very simple. You can add products and details and share attributes very, very quickly. One of the other things that especially helps for salespeople and for people providing customer service from Salesforce is improved activity management. I used to be able to see a list of 3, 4, 5 activities associated with an opportunity, and they were just a text list. Now that's a dynamic interactive list. I can have much more, I don't have limits, preset limits on how many activities I can see. I can edit them, assign them to people using drag and drop, and see their status, not only on activity screens, but also in dashboards and affiliated next to opportunities. As you see here, I see some of my sales activities on the left. I see my tasks and opportunities on the right. So I can look at multiple pieces in my sales portfolio at one time, and I can see and work on those activities or see the status of other activities that people are working on very, very easily. Lightning is also improved in the area of LinkedIn integration. Now, for example, if you're trying to get more details about a contact, you can pull LinkedIn information in directly inside the Salesforce user interface. And the other thing that Salesforce has made a lot easier in Lightning is list emails. That is, it used to be that you would have to go in and go through a separate screen to create an email. Now you can do it directly inside of service cases, from activities, from inside of opportunities for sales. It makes it very, very easy to build and send customized emails out to clients and contacts right from the user interface. So it speeds up the whole process. The other area there where Lightning makes a big impact is in customer service with the Lightning Service Console. The Service Console gives us a single view of what's going on if I'm a customer service agent. It makes it easy for me to see and manage cases all from a single screen. The Service Console really helps us consolidate pieces where I used to have to go to different parts of the application or go to different screens to see things. Now all the information I see is right at my fingertips. It's in one place. So if I need to go in and make changes to cases, if I've got 6 related cases and I want to close them all or change a status, I can now make mass changes very quickly, easily inside the Lightning interface. One of the other things that Lightning lets me do is email search. I can find information about emails, and if you're a customer service agent and someone calls in, most of the time we hope that I can see customer emails affiliated with the case, but in practical terms that doesn't happen a lot. People come in and say, hey, I sent you an email earlier in the week. Well, now from inside the Service Console, the service agent can go search emails, looking for emails from that customer, either based on their email address or by topic or content of the email, find that email and associate it with the case quickly. So I don't have to leave the screen and go out and do something else. Right from inside the Service Console, I can now look for and find emails. Same thing applies to my knowledge base. If I'm using Microsoft Knowledge, or not Microsoft, Salesforce Knowledge, I can see the information on the screen. If I have a problem, need to look up a solution, it's right there. And the other thing is that emails and Salesforce Knowledge and cases, a lot of times when you're providing service, we're trying to do it all from inside the Service Console, but sometimes for these things, I need to go to a different screen or look for different information. And Lightning has a solution for that as well. What they allow me to do is now pin favorites to my page. So let's say if I'm working on a certain case, I need to go elsewhere in the application, I can actually pin that up to the top of my screen. So as I go to different screens in the application, if I have to leave the Service Console, that case stays there. I can jump back to it quickly. If I'm handling a chat or SMS or email, I might be handling multiple cases at once. And I can also pin those to my screen. So as I have to go around to different places in Salesforce to find information, again, we're trying not to have to do that by doing everything in the Service Console. But if I can't and I have to move around, I can find and go back to the work that I was doing very, very quickly. These are all new features of Salesforce that really enable user adoption. They're helping my productivity. They're helping me service my customers faster. There's a couple of other things I can also do. I can initiate a customer survey now from inside of the Service Console, and I can also go in and have quick text responses. This is especially important for agents that are not handling voice, but are handling email, SMS, social media, live chat, any kind of interaction you have with a customer where you've got a standard set of questions, you can pre-build responses to those. So common questions that people are asking: how do I reset a password? Where do I go to log in? What happened to my order? What's the status? I can now send pre-programmed responses out to all of these channels using just simple drag and drop. So it makes it easier because oftentimes in those kind of environments, 80% of the questions you get are the same. So you can pre-build responses to those questions. Comes in really handy to be able to do that. Just a couple more screens here, and then we're going to get into our discussion with Peter. The other thing to consider is Salesforce focuses on themes and branding with Lightning. Previously, if you wanted to customize the look and feel, there were a lot of limitations. You either had to write a lot of code, even to do simple things like change the color and make their application look like yours. Lightning now supports full branding. So if you're a company that's really focused on brand, you want a certain look and feel inside Lightning, it's now much, much easier to do that. Also, the screenshot on the left, we've been showing some of the screens we've been moving along. This one I'd like to point out is the same screen. On the left, you see an old view from Salesforce Classic. On the right, you see a Salesforce Lightning view with the same information. You'll see that Lightning has a much more modern look and feel. It's easier to navigate, it's more graphical, and you see the use of cards. And cards on the screen now are user-defined. I can define information that's important to me. So I've got dynamic Lightning components. That means that information in one component will change based on another component's actions. Let's say if I'm looking at a contact and a sales opportunity, and I'm looking at products that customers ordered. If somebody orders a product, I see that information there reflected. If I change a piece of data on the screen, other components will react to those. That's a pretty new feature. It was introduced in the spring 2018 release, and it's allowing me to have a very responsive screen. As I change pieces of information, the other data on the screen that's displayed, including the component that's used to display it, can change. So if I'm working on a service case, depending on, for example, what type of problem I'm servicing, I might see different components displayed to help me solve that problem for my customer. And a lot of this extends down to the user level. So I can take news, I can take charts, I can take filtered lists, I can have workflow assistance, all displayed on my personal dashboard. So I can customize the user interface very easily by using drag and drop to match what I want to do. That means I might get a standard system from our IT department around what they think is the best look and feel, but I can customize that look and feel in terms of what is going to work well for me. Each agent or salesperson can customize the dashboards and look and feel of the information to match how they want to work. It's also what we mean by personalized navigation. The other thing we mentioned earlier is that if we had to, say, pin a case or an opportunity to the top of a screen to move elsewhere, well, there's a lot of other things I can also pin. For example, if I have a website that I use a lot, if I'm a customer service agent and I need to go to an external site, I can pin that to my screen. It can show up there as a web tab, so there'll be just a tab in the application that represents an external website. So again, we're trying to do everything inside of Salesforce so people don't have to go to other locations. But if you do have to do that, depending on how complex your environment is, again, I can still do that inside the application using web tabs and come back to that place where I was working. So I can search through account lists, I can search for files, I can get all those filtered results on my screen. So things that I used to be able to do but have to go to multiple parts of the application or even leave the application, I can now do from a single Lightning screen inside Salesforce. So when we talk about user adoption, that's what we mean. There's a lot of ways in here that we can now find and navigate through information much faster. There's a lot of other things we can do. If we're building external pages, setting up Salesforce communities, I can assign audiences to those. We've improved notifications and workflow in the application. So there's a lot of different ways that Lightning can help me work smarter. So as we look at this, a lot of people are asking us, well, how do I move from Salesforce? Salesforce Classic into Salesforce Lightning is a little bit more work than traditional Salesforce upgrades, which is mostly self-upgrading. Inside of Salesforce, there is in the setup something called a Lightning Experience Readiness Report. And what that will do is the system will go in, look at your old Salesforce Classic user interface, the components and functionality you've got there, and do an assessment of what has to change, what controls are different, where the potential problems are, and it will even estimate the amount of work effort to change. How many hours do I have to put in? If I'm engaging in a system integrator, what's my expectation how much work is this going to take to move? And we found that the Lightning Experience Readiness Report is fairly accurate. It does really represent a realistic representation for most customers of the level of effort you have to put in to move. I'll also identify if there are things that Lightning doesn't do. When Lightning first came out, there were a lot of components that in Lightning and the Classic user interface for Salesforce that didn't necessarily work in Lightning. Lightning is now much better at those. Almost everything you could do in Classic, you can now do in Lightning. But if you've got some of the functionalities that aren't there, the readiness report will show you that. And that serves as a good effort or a good starting place to look at and plan what the estimate is for doing Lightning conversion. Depending on the complexity and age of your Salesforce application, it might be a short process. Could be a longer, more involved one. If you've got a Salesforce instance that's 15, I've got some customers that have 10, 15-year-old instances. They can have a lot of changes because not only will we look at changing the user interface, but if Salesforce has changed over time, a lot of features have been added. It may be that features have been added that will modernize or replace some older features that perhaps required a lot of customization or a lot of coding in an older version of Salesforce that can now be done out of the box. So when we work with our customers and helping them convert, we not only look at what is the technical work that has to happen to move from Salesforce Classic to Lightning, but we'll also look at how people are using the application and look at if some of the newer features in Lightning around workflow, using things like Process Builder to replace the old text-based workflow with a visual drag and drop for process flow. There's a lot of changes in the application that you might be able to take advantage of. So we'll also highlight some of those when we engage with our customers and looking at how you can migrate from Salesforce Classic over to Lightning Experience. And typically, this can be a process that takes, it could take 4 weeks for some customers. It could take 3 months for most, is under 3 months. There are a few exceptions to that, but even older, complicated orgs usually can be converted in less than a quarter for most customers. And in some cases, it's a lot faster than that. So as we engage with people and help them do this, they found that the other great thing about Lightning is you don't have to do it all at once. You can turn it on for a subset of users. So you might go into a certain department or maybe certain power users, early adopters, and enable the Lightning experience for them. It also has a great way of being used because it's so mobile friendly that sometimes we'll have some of our customers will engage first with the mobile users, people using Salesforce for mobile devices, because Lightning offers such a huge benefit for those kind of users with their responsive mobile interface that some people choose to enable the mobile interface first for people that are out on the road using Salesforce. So there's a lot of different options and different ways to engage Salesforce. And we see this now, and one of the reasons we're having this webinar is we're seeing tremendous traction in our customer base. Lightning has reached the point where it's matured, it's fast, it's reliable. It now has enough features and enough flexibility that even people looked at it when it first came out and said, it looks nice, but it's a bridge too far to get from where I am to the Lightning experience. And if that's your experience, I'd suggest it's probably time to take another look. And you might find that that right now is the time to move to Lightning, that it's reached that maturity level where it makes sense to do it. So we're just going to talk quickly about a couple of customers. Then we're going to get Peter on the line here. We are doing Lightning experience conversion for a lot of customers. One of them, we had a customer who is in the financial services industry, and they had an older customer service environment where people were using an external application to dial out to their customers, doing predictive dial, having salespeople and call center agents go out and contact their customer. We found that Lightning would be able to accomplish this much more quickly, more easily, and with more integrated environment. So this was a very short project, only took a few weeks to do, and we were able to replace their external dialing system with a built-in telephony integrated system inside Lightning. Salesforce offers a lot of tools to talk to telephone systems. So if you're making or receiving phone calls and looking for a smoother way to do it, Lightning is definitely worth a look. we found that they were able to not only integrate the Lightning dialer, but it resulted in an increase in agent efficiency. They're able to place more calls more quickly, less effort on the part of the agents, and more accuracy. Second use case we have in here is we have a telco that we've been working with, and we had built them a system to help track sales activity, monitoring, and reporting. All of their existing processes for services, for products that they're selling, are all migrated into Salesforce Lightning. And what they found is that Salesforce Lightning really helped them have a shorter process to translate business requirements from their clients into usable solutions for their customers. And they did this by using the Sales Console. And the sales reps had all the information they needed on a single screen, so they didn't have to go clicking around the system looking for information, which is what used to happen inside that environment, and still does today in many CRM tools. But by an effective use of dashboards and reporting, that the salespeople are able to get the information they need more quickly to close sales. And for the sales management, they're also finding that the new dashboards in Lightning are very useful for rolling up information and doing that in a custom way. Instead of going off and having a long IT project to generate roll-up reports, they're able to do that interactively through the Lightning interface and in real time. So as the sales situation changes, things update on your screen. In the prior screen, when we were talking about the call center, one of our clients said that the important thing is for them to see real-time updates to information. As conditions in the call center change, as a call center manager, I've got to react to that. I might need to bring on more agents. I might need to change how calls are being queued. I might need to change skill sets in terms of which agents are answering which calls. And being able to see that information in real time is really important to make some of those decisions as I'm running the call center. And Lightning is a lot more capable of doing that, providing me real-time information around my sales process and my call center process. So if you're engaged in e-commerce and selling over the web through working with a call center, responding to sales on your website, Lightning really helps react to those in a more profound way. So you've been listening to me talk. Now I think I'd like to introduce Peter Morales for the CIE CIO. And to tell you what CIE is and what they do, Peter, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Can you hear me okay? I'm on a headset.
Absolutely. Sounds good.
Okay, good. I'm Pete Morales. I'm the CIO for CIE. So my background is 10 years on Wall Street, primarily at the New York Stock Exchange, about 10 years at NYU, where I still teach 2 courses in a master's program. And now I'm the CIO for CIE, who is an international education solution provider. And we reach about 45,000 students a year for inbound and outbound study exchange programs. And we have a fairly complicated business process, including now an internship company that we purchased in Toronto. And we started down a Salesforce route several years ago, before my tenure here, and struggled a little bit with Classic. Moved to a hybrid model, which was kind of bespoke UI using Angular Bootstrap on the front end. And then more recently, we engaged with Marlabs for integration of our internship model, and decided to go the Lightning route, which was to me really transformative and interesting in the sense that I was a little leery of the changes that had happened, and so I was looking at Lightning and saying, okay, let's give it a try, and I'll tell you, it was a really great experience from a couple of perspectives. First, Marlabs was very instrumental in coming in and helping us understand our existing process. So the way the internship council component of our organization works is they had a lot of custom processes running in FileMaker and Google Drive and other ad hoc mechanisms that allowed us to sort of pull together information in a very organic way, and that's really one of the significant challenges of what we're trying to do, is transform that from an organic model to a real business process and workflow. So Marlabs came in and we talked to a lot of and we're distributed all over the world, so we had lots and lots of conversations with our business users around the world, and understood, figured out the process, put together a version that runs in Lightning now. And then, as important as the technical solution is the integration into the organization. So we got a lot of help in terms of training and making sure that everyone had a real good understanding of how to use the new model. And there are changes. I think that this is the kind of, anytime you move from organic to a business process workflow, there's going to be some resistance. And surprisingly, it was a lot less than I expected. I really anticipated a lot more problems than we had. I mean, and I think I credit that to incorporating the business users first to understand the business process, mapping that to Lightning quickly, and showing continuous, and we use an agile methodology, so we would build and show, and keep the business users involved throughout the process. And then at the end, as we rolled it out to the different groups, a lot of additional hand-holding to make sure that they all understood what the new process was and how that was going to work. Excuse me. So all told, and I don't recall the exact timing, but it was a fraction of what we would have spent in terms of building our own bespoke UI using Angular and Bootstrap. And that's one of the critical lessons for me, is in terms of speed to market, which is for me one of the big changes that we're working towards in my organization, is we don't want to have year-long projects or 2-year-long projects. They miss the mark in terms of business value, and so this is a good way to quickly transform a vision using low-code methodology into a working product very quickly, and engage customers in that process. So for me, it was a very clear victory, and we're looking forward to doing more. In fact, in about 15 minutes, another team from Marlabs is coming in, and we're talking about the next project. So we're excited about the changes and how this transforms the way we work. So if you have any questions, I mean, that's it in a nutshell.
All right, thank you, Peter. And this is a good opportunity for people to ask questions. Since we have a lot of attendees here, we're not going to open up the audio, as that would be turn a lot of background noise. But feel free to go into the application and ask questions. We've also got a few questions on the line. and like to talk about those. But the first thing, while we answer those questions, what I'm going to do is pop up some contact information. So if you like what you heard, you want to learn more about Lightning, you can reach out for our U.S. customers directly to myself, chris.clegg at marlabs.com. Also, we've got Deepak Mani in our India site, India customers. We'll be able to answer questions there. Or you can go to marlabs.com. We've got a large section on our website talking about Salesforce. We've also got video testimonials from customers, more case studies, different types of use cases. So it's a tremendous resource for people. If we're looking here at the questions, we've got a few. So let me go through the list here and answer some of those for you. One of the questions we have is somebody's asking about, let me just scroll down here, sorry for that. They're asking about sales enablement, and they're saying, if I'm using Salesforce, what Lightning features are there to help enable sales from that perspective. And we talked a little bit about the Sales Console, and I think the biggest difference is the way the opportunity works in Salesforce. You can see the complete path of your sales process from beginning to end. You have the Kanban view that's going to enable that card-oriented focused opportunities. Great way to see and update status quickly. There's also other features in Salesforce that we didn't really touch on in this call, but for example, data.com for data enrichment. Data.com does crowdsourcing of contact information. As you know, it sometimes can be difficult to track information about your contacts as they move around and change their address, change their email. Salesforce can actually crowdsource the answer to those and update your CRM application for that. Also, the ability to target activities related to sales. You see reminders and notices, and you can see activities across the whole sales team, all from a single view. And also the view of Salesforce they give you in contacts, you're not only seeing a reporting hierarchy of who reports to whom, but you can on the same screen see key influencers. So when you're looking at and analyzing and mapping accounts, it becomes easier to see that information on the screen. It becomes very useful to be able to see that. Another question we had is someone is asking about to what degree does Lightning help with branding in my company and themes? And really everything you see on the screen is now easily customized in Lightning. So defining color schemes, an underlying theme for the display of the page, inserting logos, changing menus, and even rearranging the behavior of the screen. Previously in Salesforce Classic, you could change fields on the screen, but the menu structure in terms of tabs across the top and a search column on the left-hand side, you couldn't really move those. You couldn't change the color. In Lightning, the look and feel of the whole system can be changed. We have one client that we're working with where they have an internal user experience team, and they went through and defined what every screen should look like in the application. And previously, that would have been a lot of customization, a lot of coding using older technologies like Visualforce in Salesforce. Visualforce let you customize screens, but it was really an older style approach to managing that, in that you would have to go in and write code, and you'd have to use the Visualforce development language, which looked a lot like Java, and you'd have to go in and write code to change the screens. Now with Lightning, you can often do that just with the out-of-the-box components, changing look, feel, color schemes. But if you do have to do development and have to build a new component, if you say, for example, want to implement drag and drop functionality for something that doesn't exist out of the box, right? Salesforce now supports a lot of drag and drop in this user interface. Those components become reusable. So if I do have to get to the point where I have to write code, I can now take that component and use it in different places inside my Salesforce application. We had a question from someone saying, is the Lightning dialer that we were talking about earlier only supported in Lightning? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. It's designed to work only in the Lightning graphical environment, since it works very differently. We have another question here. Someone said, is the LinkedIn connector for Sales Cloud available? And yes, it is. It's part of the Spring 18 release, so that's a brand new feature of Salesforce, and that automatic updating of pulling LinkedIn information from LinkedIn into your contact database and being able to view it on the same screen. And that's a brand new interface that was added. Someone asked how long it takes to move from Classic to Lightning, and I think we did talk about that a little bit earlier, in that for many customers, it's as short as 4 weeks, and for more complex, older Salesforce implementations, if you've got hundreds of users, it can take longer. But generally, we don't see them running longer than 3 to 4 month conversion, even if it's an older, complex environment. So we do see some of that. We had a couple of questions about Outlook, and people are saying, hey, we're using Outlook for our corporate email. Does Lightning integrate with a corporate email system? And the answer is yes, it does. In Salesforce, the early versions of Salesforce, they only had Outlook add-ins where I had to install something into my Outlook client to communicate with Salesforce. And that was kind of awkward, difficult to use, didn't always work properly. What Salesforce has done is they've introduced an Exchange connector. So now Salesforce on the back end will talk directly to your Exchange environment. So they're not using add-ins inside of Outlook anymore. Rather, Salesforce is talking directly to Exchange as a client. So emails get imported. You can see them on the screen in the Lightning interface. And we talked before that I can even respond to them using predefined emails, and I can do that without going into a special email screen. I can do it right from the Sales Console or from the Service Console. So it's providing me a lot more flexibility. And the idea behind that is if I'm receiving emails, especially in a customer service environment, but also in a sales environment, it makes it easier to tie those emails into opportunities and to tie those emails into service cases and to respond to those. And as we talked about earlier, I can also go out and search and find emails in Exchange that might not be on my screen. Maybe I'm working in a customer service environment and someone's emailed me and I need to go out and find that information. Well, I can now do that right from inside the Service Console. So it's providing me a lot of benefit in terms of usability. And the effort inside of Lightning is to try to keep people on the same screen and not going out to multiple screens at the same time. Okay, let's take a look and see if we have any other questions. We wanted to really wrap this up about 45 minutes past the hour, so we've got probably time for 2 or 3 more questions. Someone's asking that, saying, look, we're interested in moving for Lightning. We talked about the evaluation process, see if their customer is ready for it. Is there a common checklist for one size fits all? Well, there is, and that will be the Lightning Readiness Report. So that's a feature built into Salesforce. If you've already got Salesforce Classic installed, you can go in and run that yourself, and it's going to highlight any potential problems that you have inside the Salesforce environment. I found if you've got a very simple Salesforce setup, and there's not much that has to be changed, sometimes it reports complexity that's not necessarily there. I think they err on the side of being all-inclusive. So I've seen some very simple Salesforce implementations that came back and said, oh, we need to do 100 hours of work, and the reality was probably closer to 30 minutes of work. But as the complexity of that grows, it's actually a really very valuable tool. It's pretty accurate in terms of, except for the very, very simple Salesforce setups. If you've got a moderate to large complexity, it's pretty good at determining that. Saying what kind of hand-holding is done, are there video tutorials, text documents, train the trainer? Well, there is a lot online. Salesforce has implemented a training environment called Trailhead, and Salesforce training used to be oriented toward people who were just developing the application. But now Trailhead has really expanded to people using Salesforce in different ways. End users, people who are selling, people who are using it to provide customer service. And of course, there's a lot of developer content still in there. But even for end user training, there's a lot of information available on Trailhead. In addition, when we engage with our customers, we typically get involved in doing train the trainer. We'll help set up training materials. If an organization is moving to Lightning, we'll help them develop a training plan for rolling out different phases of the application. So someone's also asking integration with interfaces like Echo and Siri. Some of that is being rolled out. I haven't seen out-of-the-box components for those, but I wouldn't be surprised to see it soon. So that's something we'd be happy to look into more offline. Certainly voice response is becoming a huge part of the business. When you look at the retail industry, you're seeing that mobile apps are providing a higher conversion rate than responsive websites. And you're also seeing that voice response, although it's still a very small part of the market, is actually growing very rapidly and starting to eat into that middle of the market where the mobile apps are providing responses. So I would expect to see voice search becoming a much larger part of the implementation. Okay. Someone's asking if their implementation has a lot of interfaces. Does that need migration? The great thing about Salesforce is it does not impact the back end. So the business logic layer in Salesforce, integration layers don't really change. This is all happening at the user interface level. So if your integration is, for example, if part of your integration has a custom user interface, then that might have to change. But the back end, if you're exchanging information with another application and you put a Lightning UI on the front end, you don't have to go back and change that integration. That business logic and those integration layers stay the same. Okay. And I think we're getting close to the end of our time. So we're going to go in here and look. Someone else is asking, what is the cost typically to switch? The answer is it really depends on the implementation that you've got and the complexity. As I said, it can vary anywhere from 4 weeks to 3 or 4 months, but we've seen it being done sometimes in a simple implementation. It might take one person. And if it's being done in an offshore development environment, which we have offer a combination of on-site and offshore, if it's something where the technical complexity is limited and it can be done offshore, it can be done pretty inexpensively, maybe several $1,000s. We have some customers of older, really complex environments that have hundreds of people using them, and they might be spending, potentially tens of thousands. But none of these projects are, it's not a $1 million conversion effort, right? Certainly, we're seeing it ranging from a few $1,000s for a simple instance, and sometimes in the low tens of thousands if they've got a really complicated environment. But it's very rarely a huge project. It's manageable and can be done usually in a few months at the most. Okay, so we're not able to get to everybody's question here just because of the format of the call, but I do thank people for putting them in. We've got a lot of great questions here. So what we're going to do is I'd like people to stay on the line if you like and continue to ask questions, and we may come back and be able to talk to you one-on-one and answer some of those. So also, if you'd like to know more, if we have to, because of the format of the webinar, talk at a very high level, but we'd be happy to go out and have a telephone discussion, maybe do a deeper dive, get some of our architects on the line, and really answer any questions that you might have. But I'd really like to thank everyone for attending today. We got great participation in the polls. We got a lot of good questions. I'm sorry we're not able to answer all of them in the webinar format. But we'd really, we may be reaching out to some of you. We'll send you a feedback survey, and we will make a copy of the deck available to people. Someone did ask that question. So and we're also going to take this recording of the webinar, and it's going to be made available on our website. So if you missed something, want to go back and see it again, or want to refer it to one of your colleagues, you'll be able to do that. So thank you very much, and appreciate everyone joining, and especially a shout out to Peter Morales, the CIO of CIEE, who joined us today to talk about his experience with Lightning and Salesforce. All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris.